We're ranking the top 10 hardest story bosses in Final Fantasy X. We're only looking at the mandatory ones, so as much as we all love to brag about finally taking down Penance or Nemesis, you won't find those optional super bosses here. This list is all about the main quest monsters that stood between you and the end of Tidus' story. Kicking off our list is the gooey puzzle from Macalania Woods, Spherimorph. This boss is a lesson in nuisance. As a big blob, it resists physical attacks and absorbs all magic except for one specific element. If you hit it with its current weakness, it immediately performs an elemental shift, randomly changing to a new one. The only way to know what to use is to hit it with a physical attack and see what spells it counters with. The weakness is always the opposite element. Now, the real frustration came from this delicate dance. On its turn, it stops a single party member, but once its HP is halved, it can use Press, a nasty attack that halves the entire party's HP and ignores Protect. It's a mandatory pop quiz that punishes you for not paying attention and could easily end your run if you came unprepared. Coming in at number 9 is the Sanctuary Keeper, Guardian of the Xanarkan Ruins. This fight is a pure test of your party's endurance and your ability to counter a surprisingly clever opponent. It opens the battle with Photon Wings, which damages the whole party and can inflict a mess, and I mean a mess of status effects, like Curse, Confusion, and Silence. It then follows up with a physical attack before blasting a single character with the heavy-hitting Mana Breath. Now the real challenge is how it counters. It will use Curaga to heal itself or cast Protect if you use Armor Break. Worse, after you attack it enough, it has a scaling chance to counter with Tail Sweep, which heavily delays your party's turn and removes haste. If you manage to inflict slow on it, it will simply cast haste on itself. This wasn't just a beast to be slain, it was a thinking opponent that made you earn every single hit. At number 8, we have the battle on its surface of Sin, which isn't just against Sin Core, but also its guardian, Janaeus. For most of the fight, Janaeus does the heavy lifting, and while it's active, the core is completely out of range of melee attacks. Janaeus is trouble enough, but when it withdraws into its shell, the core begins charging Gravager, a devastating attack that rips away a huge chunk of your party's HP. Once Janaeus is finally down, the core is free to use Gravager at will. Now the real pain, however, is trying to attack the core itself. Every time you target it, it can retaliate with a string of elemental spells, or even worse, use Negation, attack that rips away every single positive status effect you've applied on your party members. It's a battle that actively punishes you for trying to gain an advantage. Our number 7 spot goes to the Guardian Worm of Bevel, Eve Ray. Fought on the deck of the airship, the most terrifying thing about this boss battle is that you don't even have Yuna. You are on your own, and Eve Ray is a nightmare. The fight introduces a cool mechanic where Tidus and Riku can command Sid to pull the airship away from the boss. From a distance, Eve Ray can hit you with a weak photon spray, but you can only hit it with long-range attacks. Close up, it uses a vicious physical combo followed by a chargeable poison breath. It also has Stone Gaze, which not only petrifies, but also inflicts a unblockable slow. Once you knock it down to 1/3 of its health, it casts haste on itself and becomes a flurry of death. This fight forces you to defy an onslaught without your best healer. At number 6, we have the emotional climax of the game, Braska's final Aeon, also known as Jack, my boy. This isn't just a boss fight, it's Tidus confronting his father, and the game makes you feel every bit of that weight. You start the battle with Tidus, Yuna, and Auron. Jet is flanked by 2 statues that constantly heal him for 1500 HP and removes negative statuses. Worse, every time they use their power wave, his overdrive gauge fills by 20%. As a unique lifeline, Tidus can use the talk command to reset Jet's gauge, but this only works twice. In his first form, he can use Jet Beam to petrify a character, and his normal attack can then shatter them. His overdrive Triumphant Grasp deals heavy damage and can inflict zombie. In his second form, he pulls a massive sword from his chest. That is diabolical, and he can now use a sword swipe called Blade Blitz that hits an entire party and delays their turn. His overdrive also changes to the ultimate jet shot, which can hit all characters for around 4,000 to 5,000 damage. It's a difficult and emotional draining battle that perfectly caps off your game. Breaking into our top 5 is the Spectral Keeper, another guardian you face in the Xanarkand Ruins. Now this boss is all about one thing: positioning. The battle takes place on a unique field where each party member stands on a floating platform. These separate platforms means guard and sentinel are disabled. The Keeper's gimmick: its attacks hit specific platforms, and if your characters are standing on them, they take massive damage. Its most feared move is Eclipse Mine, where it places bombs on 2 random platforms that causes instant death when they detonate on its next turn. The key is using the trigger command to move your party from one platform to another. Now, trying to predict where it will strike next in a lethal game of musical chairs. To make matters worse, it can counterattack by hitting the 3 platforms in front of it, and its Berserk Tail has a 50% chance of inflicting berserk, making your own characters uncontrollable. This fight was a unique mix of strategy, luck, and pure terror. Oh, here he is, the man who just won't go away. At number 4, we have our first encounter with Seymour on this list. Seymour Natus. This fight is a massive step up from your first run in with him. This is where Seymour starts getting really cheap. He's joined by his Morty body, which began casting a basic elemental spell on the party, setting Seymour up to follow with his double cast of a more powerful raw version. Below 24,000 HP, he casts Protect on himself and start using Break to turn your character into stone. This leads his deadliest combo. The Morty body uses Shattering Claw, which will instantly kill a petrified character. If you try to defeat the Morty body, it just revives by draining HP from Seymour with Morty Absorption. He'll even banish an AI if you summon after it gets 1 turn. This was a brutal difficulty spike that forced you to manage not just Seymour, but his parasitic sidekick too. And of course he's back. Taking the bronze medal of pain is Seymour Omnis. This is Seymour at his most complex and frankly most annoying, bro. The battle is a frantic race against his magic. Seymour is surrounded by 4 elemental wheels called Mortiphasms. On his turn, he casts 4 successive spells whose element and power are determined by the element of these wheels, casting devastating gas spells if 3 or 4 wheels match. If the wheel also dictate his weaknesses and absorptions. After taking 6 hits, he glows red, homie, blood red. Casts Dispel on your party, and on his next turn unleashes a devastating Ultima that ignores most defense. Once his HP is low, he'll do this after only 3 hits. It's a fight that demands intense focus and micromanagement, and it represents the peak of Seymour's infuriating boss design. He's hard, point blank period. Now, there are tough bosses, and then there are bosses that feel like a form of psychological warfare. Taking the silver medal is Lady Yunalesca. She is widely considered one of the most infamous bosses in the series and the poster child for destroying Final Fantasy X playthroughs. Now, this fight is a cruel 3-phase nightmare, homie, with each form having her own separate HP pool. In the first phase, she counters physical attacks with Blind, magical attacks with Silence, and special commands with Sleep. On her turn, she'll either hit you with a weak physical attack that removes most of positive buffs, or use Absorb, which drains half of a character's maximum HP and heals her by the same amount. The second phase begins with her using Hellbiter in zombie status. Then, to be truly twisted, she'll cast Regen and Cura on a random party member, which will damage them instead of healing. This woman is unbelievable. But it's the third phase that breaks people. She starts with Mega Death, an attack that instantly kills any character who isn't a zombie. Now, this creates a brilliant evil trap. And the worst part, if you lose, you have to sit through that long, unskippable cutscene every single time you retry. That is diabolical. Lady Unalesca isn't just a boss. She's a test of your sanity, bro. But even Lady Unalesca has to bow to the king. For many players, the #1 hardest story boss in Final Fantasy X is Seymour Flux, fought high on Mount Gargazet. This is often seen as the single most jarring difficulty spike in the game. This fight is pure, unfiltered pain, homie. Seymour is fast, stronger, and comes with his Morty-Kochish, whatever it's called. For a small advantage, Kimahri can use the talk command to raise his strength and her magic defense. Seymour has an attack called Lance of Entropy, which inflicts zombie. Then, with his Morty body, or whatever that staff is, would immediately follow up with casting full life on that zombified character, instantly killing them. It is one of the most cheapest, and I mean the most cheapest and most effective combos in the game. After using that twice, he'll cast a party-wide Dispel, and the Morty body will follow up with Cross Cleave, dealing about 2,000 damage to everyone. As his health drops, he casts Protect, and then Reflect at 50% HP, after which he starts bouncing powerful flare spells off himself onto the party. But his ultimate move, Total Annihilation, his Morty body will charge this for 2 turns before unleashing an attack, almost guaranteed to wipe your party. If you summon an AI, the attack is delayed, but it will fire as soon as Seymour banishes it. After the first time, it only takes 1 turn to charge. This fight isn't just a challenge, it is a brick wall that brought countless playthroughs to a screeching halt. But the beauty of Final Fantasy X is that everyone's struggle was a little different. That's my list, but I want to hear yours. What was the one boss that gave you the most trouble? The one that almost made you quit? Drop your own top 3 hardest bosses in the comments below, homie. Let's share the trauma. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this trip down a very painful memory lane, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more Final Fantasy X content. We'll see you in the next one, homie. Peace.